Welcome to Read and Reflect, the podcast that delves into the depths of classic literature and explores the timeless questions they raise. Today, we embark on a journey into the unsettling and profoundly thought-provoking world of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. This seminal novella, penned by the Czech-German writer Franz Kafka, was first published in 1915. Emerging during the height of literary modernism, The Metamorphosis stands as a powerful allegory exploring themes of alienation, dehumanization, and the absurd nature of existence. Kafka, writing in a period marked by societal upheaval and anxieties about identity in a rapidly changing world, crafted a narrative that continues to resonate with readers today. His unique style, now famously termed Kafkaesque, blends the realistic with the bizarre, creating a dreamlike and often nightmarish atmosphere. In this episode, we'll dissect the key elements of The Metamorphosis. We'll read a pivotal early passage, unpack its rich symbolism, analyze the complex relationships between the characters, and discuss the novella's enduring legacy by touching upon its influence on modern adaptations. Get ready to delve into a story that will leave you questioning the very fabric of reality and the bonds of human connection. Personally, The Metamorphosis has always struck me with its raw portrayal of the feeling of being an outsider, even within one's own family. The sheer absurdity of Gregor's transformation, coupled with the disturbingly realistic reactions of those around him, creates a potent commentary on the fragility of human identity and the conditional nature of love and acceptance. It's a story that lingers in the mind long after you've finished reading, prompting reflection on our own fears of inadequacy and the ways in which society can alienate the other. To begin our exploration, let's turn to one of the most impactful opening passages in literature, setting the stage for Gregor Samsa's bewildering predicament.
One morning, as Gregor Samsa was waking up from anxious dreams, he discovered that in bed he had been changed into a monstrous verminous bug. He lay on his armor-hard back and saw, as he lifted his head up a little, his brown, arched abdomen divided up into rigid ball-like sections. From this height, the blanket, just about ready to slide off completely, could hardly stay in place. His numerous legs, pitifully thin in comparison to the rest of his circumference, flickered helplessly before his eyes.
From the very first line, Kafka employs a matter-of-fact tone to describe an utterly fantastical event. The phrase, as Gregor Samsa was waking up from anxious dreams, suggests that his transformation is simply another part of his routine rather than an earth-shattering moment. The contrast between the surreal event and Gregor's initial, almost indifferent reaction underscores Kafka's theme of absurdity. Even the most bizarre changes are met with human concerns about daily life. Gregor is more preoccupied with his job as a traveling salesman than with his transformation, reinforcing his status as a cog in an impersonal system.
"What's happened to me?" he thought. It was no dream. His room, a proper room for a human being only somewhat too small, lay quietly between the four well-known walls. Above the table, on which an unpacked collection of sample cloth goods was spread out, Samsa was a traveling salesman, hung the picture which he had cut out of an illustrated magazine a little while ago and set in a pretty gilt frame. It was a picture of a woman with a fur hat and a fur boa. She sat erect there, lifting up in the direction of the viewer a solid fur muff into which her entire forearm disappeared. Gregor's glance then turned to the window. The dreary weather, the raindrops were falling audibly down on the metal window ledge, made him quite melancholy. "Why don't I keep sleeping for a little while longer and forget all this foolishness?" he thought. But this was entirely impractical, for he was used to sleeping on his right side, and in his present state he couldn't get himself into this position. No matter how hard he threw himself onto his right side, he always rolled again onto his back. He must have tried it 100 times, closing his eyes, so that he would not have to see the wriggling legs, and gave up only when he began to feel a light, dull pain in his side, which he had never felt before.
This opening immediately thrusts us into the heart of the bizarre. Gregor's primary concern upon waking isn't the monumental transformation itself, but rather the practical implications, being late for work. This juxtaposition of the extraordinary and the mundane is a hallmark of Kafka's style and sets the stage for exploring the novella's central themes. Let's delve deeper into the themes at play here. Foremost is the theme of alienation and isolation. Gregor's metamorphosis instantly isolates him physically from his family and the world. He is confined to his room, unable to communicate effectively, his voice reduced to a painful squeaking. As the days pass, this physical isolation breeds emotional and psychological alienation. His family, initially showing concern, gradually become repulsed and overwhelmed by his presence. Even his own thoughts become increasingly detached from his former human self. The locked door of his room becomes a potent symbol of this forced separation. Gregor's metamorphosis isolates him not just physically but psychologically. He is unable to communicate effectively, his voice reduced to a painful squeaking.
From the next room, his sister uttered a word of warning. "Gregor?" At first, Gregor was glad to hear his sister's voice, but then he realized that she was alarmed because he had spoken in a way she could not understand.
This moment marks the beginning of Gregor's increasing detachment from humanity. The locked door to his room serves as a potent symbol of this forced separation, both physically barring him from the outside world and representing the emotional chasm growing between him and his family. Initially, his family exhibits some concern, but as time passes, they become increasingly repulsed by his presence. The door that once separated Gregor's personal life from his job now becomes a barrier to any remaining connection with his loved ones. Closely linked to alienation is the theme of dehumanization. As Gregor's insect form becomes more apparent, he is increasingly treated not as a person but as a monstrous creature. And the manager's horrified reaction and the father's violent attack with the apple underscore this dehumanization. Even his sister, Greta, who initially cares for him, eventually declares, "You must try to get rid of the idea that this is Gregor." This chilling statement marks the ultimate erasure of Gregor's human identity in the eyes of his family. The cleaning woman's casual and disrespectful treatment, calling him old dung beetle, further emphasizes his descent into a mere object of disgust. Another crucial theme is the absurdity of existence. The novella offers no logical explanation for Gregor's transformation. It simply is. This lack of rational causality reflects the inherent absurdity that Kafka perceived in the human condition. Gregor's struggle to adapt to his new form, coupled with his family's often illogical and emotionally driven reactions, highlights the chaotic and unpredictable nature of life. His concerns about work and the family's financial situation in the face of such a bizarre event further underscore this sense of the absurd. The dynamics within the Samsa family undergo a dramatic shift following Gregor's transformation. Initially, Gregor is the sole provider, working tirelessly to pay off his parents' debt. His metamorphosis reverses this dynamic, forcing the other family members to find employment. The father, previously inactive, takes on the role of a bank messenger, donning a uniform that symbolizes his newfound authority and return to societal function. The mother, fragile and prone to distress, takes on sewing work, and Greta, Gregor's younger sister, initially shows the most compassion, bringing him food and cleaning his room. However, as the burden of Gregor's care weighs heavily on her and the family's financial situation worsens, Greta's affection turns to resentment. Her eventual declaration that they must get rid of Gregor marks a painful turning point in their relationship and highlights the strain that such an extraordinary and unwelcome event places on familial bonds. The fact that Greta seems to blossom after Gregor's death suggests a disturbing sense of liberation for the family. Let's now turn our attention to character analysis. Gregor himself is a tragic figure. Even in his insect form, he retains memories and feelings from his human life, longing for connection and understanding. His attempts to communicate his needs and intentions are futile, leading to increasing frustration and despair. He clings to remnants of his past, such as the picture of the woman in furs, which symbolizes a longing for human connection and perhaps a more sensual life he never fully experienced. His initial concern for his family's well-being persists even after his transformation, highlighting his inherent selflessness. Greta's transformation throughout the novella is particularly significant. Initially portrayed as a somewhat childish figure, She steps into a caregiving role out of necessity. However, the constant burden and the repulsive nature of Gregor's condition gradually erode her compassion. Her increasing efficiency and detachment in caring for Gregor foreshadow her eventual rejection of him. Her newfound maturity and the family's plans for her future after Gregor's death suggest a pragmatic, albeit unsettling, survival mechanism. Mr. and Mrs. Samsa's reactions are also telling. Their initial shock and helplessness give way to a desire for self-preservation. The father's uniform signifies his reassertion of authority and his return to a conventional societal role, perhaps as a way to cope with the unconventional horror in his home. His violent outburst, particularly the apple-throwing incident, reveals a deep-seated fear and resentment towards Gregor's monstrous state. Mother's fragility and fainting spells highlight her inability to cope with the situation, often leaving Greta to shoulder the burden of care. Their eventual relief at Gregor's death underscores the extent to which he had become an unbearable weight on their lives. The manager serves as a representative of the harsh and unforgiving external world of work and societal expectations. His primary concern is Gregor's productivity and the financial implications of his absence. His horrified flight upon seeing Gregor reflects society's intolerance of the other and the immediate rejection of anything that deviates from the norm. The three lodgers who rent a room in the Samsa's apartment represent the intrusion of the outside world and the family's desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of normalcy and financial stability. Their extreme focus on cleanliness and order contrasts sharply with the squalor of Gregor's room and the underlying chaos of the family's situation. Their abrupt departure due to Gregor's appearance further isolates the family and intensifies their financial woes, ultimately contributing to Greta's decisive pronouncement about getting rid of it. Now, let's consider the context and cultural influence of the Metamorphosis. Writing in the early 20th century, Kafka was grappling with themes prevalent in modernist literature, such as the individual's alienation in an increasingly bureaucratic and industrialized world. The novella can be seen as a reflection of anxieties about identity, the loss of control, and the breakdown of traditional societal structures. The oppressive nature of Gregor's job and the demanding boss can be interpreted as a critique of dehumanizing work environments. The term Kafkaesque itself has entered the cultural lexicon to describe situations that are bizarre, illogical, and often oppressive, characterized by a sense of powerlessness and disorientation. The Metamorphosis has had a profound and lasting influence on literature, art, and philosophy, inspiring countless works that explore themes of alienation, the absurd, and the fragility of human existence. Finally, let's briefly touch upon the comparison of classic to modern adaptations. The Metamorphosis has been adapted into various forms, including film, theater, and graphic novels. Modern adaptations often explore the psychological aspects of Gregor's transformation in greater detail, perhaps focusing on his internal struggles and the metaphorical interpretations of his insect form. Some adaptations might emphasize the family's dysfunction and the breakdown of communication, while others might highlight the social commentary on alienation and the treatment of the marginalized. The visual representation of Gregor in these adaptations varies widely, reflecting different interpretations of his monstrous verminous bug form. Some might opt for a more literal insectoid depiction, while others might choose a more abstract or symbolic representation to emphasize the psychological horror and thematic resonance of the story. Ultimately, these modern adaptations offer new lenses through which to view Kafka's enduring masterpiece, often reflecting contemporary anxieties and perspectives while staying true to the core themes of the original work. To conclude our exploration of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, we've journeyed through the unsettling transformation of Gregor Samsa and examined the profound themes of alienation, dehumanization, and the absurd that permeate the novella. We've analyzed the shifting dynamics within the Samsa family and the symbolic roles of key characters. We've also briefly touched upon the novella's historical context and its lasting cultural influence, as well as the ways in which modern adaptations continue to engage with Kafka's powerful vision. Join us next time on Read and Reflect as we explore another fascinating novel that has left an indelible mark on literature. If you enjoyed our exploration of the Metamorphosis, please subscribe to Read and Reflect so you don't miss future episodes. We would also be grateful if you would rate and review the podcast. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners who love literature as much as we do. You can also share this episode with anyone you think might find it interesting.